Our brains demand a shape, a color and a physical boundary for like absolute everything we try to understand. We are just relentlessly visual creatures. But what happens when you apply that rigid rule to the unseeable forces of existence?
Right.
Today, we are taking concepts from Islamic theology and the philosopher Alan Watts to figure out why the human mind absolutely breaks down when it tries to picture the ultimate reality.
It's an ambitious inquiry, for sure, but it gets right to the core of a really fundamental human frustration.
Yeah.
Because when we try to define the undefinable, whether we're talking about God or the origin of the universe or even just the nature of our own consciousness, we run into a hard biological limit.
A wall, basically.
Exactly, a wall. We are trying to use sensory tools to measure something that exists entirely outside of the sensory realm.
And that is exactly what this deep dive is about. For anyone who has ever felt just overwhelmed by the sheer scale of existence or just wanted to understand these massive concepts without drowning in all the philosophical jargon, we are going to look at why our attempts to visualize the ultimate cause fail so spectacularly.
Yeah.
And how shifting our goal from trying to, see it to trying to inhabit it can completely change our understanding of reality.
Which requires a really profound rewiring of how we process information. I mean, we are so accustomed to looking for an object in the room that we completely forget to consider the room itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that biological limit you mentioned. Our minds are basically factories that only manufacture things.
Right.
Like we want a recognizable geometry. But according to the theological notes we're looking at today, visualizing God doesn't fail because God is just, incredibly good at playing hide and seek.
Right.
It fails because of our own internal picture-making faculty.
Yeah.
The core argument from the text is that God is simply not a thing.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that this inability to see God is not framed in the theology as like a human shortcoming.
Oh, interesting.
Or a lack of spiritual purity, It is presented as a fundamental category error. To visualize something is to put a frame around it.
A boundary.
Exactly. Whatever you can picture inherently has a boundary, a shape, and a definitive endpoint. In the language of the source notes, it sets.
Like the sun setting. But wait, I want to push back on that a bit.
Sure.
Because even in software development, we can map out a back-end system, right? We might not draw a face on the algorithm, but we can totally draw a schematic of how the data flows. So why can't we just map out the system of God in our minds without putting a physical face on it?
Well, because even a schematic relies on boundaries.
Oh, I see.
Right. A map still defines where the system starts and where it ends. And this ties directly into the logic provided in our sources, specifically Abraham's realization in the Quran in chapter 6, verse 76. He observes celestial bodies rising and setting, and he concludes, I do not love things that set.
Wow.
The philosophical argument here is that anything your mind can contain, even an abstract map or a schematic, like you said, is exactly the kind of thing that appears, has a limit, and eventually vanishes.
It's finite.
It is finite. If you can mentally draw a box around it, it fails the test for ultimate reality before the test even begins.
That is so wild because our imagination is usually treated as this boundless infinite space, but this argument implies our imagination is actually a cage.
Yeah.
It traps concepts into manageable, finite forms. And the notes point out that the Quran actively tears down those cages.
Yeah.
The text references Surah 112, which it describes as using demolition charges against every single attempt a human might make to give God a form.
And that phrase, demolition charges, it perfectly captures the mechanism of those verses. I mean, the text defines God entirely by exclusion to protect this concept of limitlessness.
Right.
It states that God is one, meaning absolute absence of plurality. God is self-sufficient, meaning all depend on him while he depends on none.
Which you fundamentally cannot draw.
Yeah.
You can't paint self-sufficiency.
Precisely because self-sufficiency implies a complete lack of external reliance. Every visual object we know relies on space to exist or on light to be seen.
Yeah.
It continues with not begotten and not begetting, which strips away origin, history, and human timeframes.
Right.
And it concludes with there is nothing like him. Those four clauses act as a firewall against human imagination.
The firewall, I like that.
And there's another verse, 6:103, that reinforces this. Vision cannot comprehend him, but he comprehends all vision. God is the ultimate seer, but is never the object of sight.
I mean, I understand the logic, I really do. But on a purely human level, it still feels deeply frustrating.
Of course.
We're wired to want proof. We want to see it to believe it. Even the prophets, who were supposedly the closest to this divine reality, they wanted that visual confirmation.
And the theology anticipates that exact human frustration.
It does.
Yeah, it doesn't ignore the longing at all. It actually stages a scenario where that request is made, allowing it to fail in real time as a lesson.
Oh, right, the Moses story.
Exactly. We see this in the story of Moses in chapter 7, verse 143. Moses flat out asks, "Show yourself to me."
To put it right out there.
It is the universal human longing articulated perfectly. And the reply is a firm, "You cannot see me."
Wow.
To demonstrate why, the divine presence manifests to the mountain instead, and the mountain completely crumbles into dust and Moses falls down unconscious.
The implication being that a finite structure, whether it's a physical mountain or the neurological structure of a human brain, literally cannot hold an infinite reality.
No.
The hardware just crashes.
The finite shatters under the weight of the infinite. The text is making it explicitly clear. The desire to see is completely understandable. It is deeply human. But the answer must remain a firm and necessary no because of the sheer physics of reality.
Okay, so if we can't picture a face and we can't draw a schematic and our hardware literally crashes when we try,
Right.
what mental model can we use?
Right.
This is where our sources transition from ancient scripture to some modern analogies that I found just incredibly helpful. The first one is just a simple question. What is football?
I love this one because it strips away all the complex theology and forces you to define a concept we interact with constantly.
Right. If I ask you what football is, you might immediately picture jerseys or a stadium or the ball itself, but none of those physical things are actually football.
No.
You can take away the stadium and the game still exists in a park. Football is the framework.
Yes.
It's the invisible set of rules governing the interaction.
Yeah.
You can't just run onto a pitch with a cricket bat and say you're playing football. The framework rejects it.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we never actually see football. We only see the players, the grass, the physical effects of the rules playing out in real time. The theological theory here posits that God is the living, conscious framework that makes everything in existence possible. Now, scientists might look at this exact same reality and call that framework the laws of physics or the universe.
Right.
They acknowledge the rules exist. But the specific theological view we are analyzing adds a crucial differentiating layer. This framework is conscious.
Wow.
And because it is conscious, there is a dimension of accountability within it.
Right.
And that is a massive distinction. A completely neutral universe doesn't care if you cheat. It doesn't care if you hurt someone as long as gravity still works.
Right.
A conscious framework, however, does care. The rules are not just physical, they are moral and relational. And the sources bring up another analogy about how rigid these frameworks are.
The VR one.
Yeah, the VR headset. If you put on a VR headset in your living room and flap your arms really hard, you still can't fly. Why? Because the framework's code just doesn't allow it. When you drink water and feel refreshed, it's the invisible code of the ultimate framework making that refreshment happen. It perfectly illustrates why demanding to see God is illogical. You can't see the rules of physics floating in the air, you just watch the apple fall.
Right.
It also clarifies the concept of divine omnipresence. The notes compare God to the back-end developers of a complex software system. You never see the developers walking around inside the video game on your screen, but their code is the only reason the game runs.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when you start talking about an invisible force making things run, the mind naturally jumps to electricity.
Of course.
We can't see electrical current, but we see the light bulb turn on. But the sources actually tear down the electricity analogy, and the reasoning is brilliant. First, humanity controls electricity. We store it in batteries, we route it through cables, we switch it on and off. You cannot store or transfer the ultimate framework.
It is entirely an issue of hierarchy. We are subordinate to the framework. The framework is not a utility for us to manipulate or harvest.
And second, and I think this is the most crucial point, if the power goes out in my house, my refrigerator stops working, the food spoils. But without God, without this ultimate causal framework, the fridge wouldn't just stop running. It would cease to exist entirely.
Yeah.
The metal, the plastic, the space it occupies, gone. Electricity merely operates the components. God causes the components to exist in the first place.
That philosophical distinction between operating and causing is so vital. The Quranic text emphasizes that God is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Not just the energy flowing through the wires, but the cause of the wires, the space they occupy, and the concept of energy itself.
The notes have this slightly humorous but profoundly accurate analogy.
Yeah.
We are like characters inside a TV show, frantically trying to deduce the nature of the people sitting on the couch watching us.
Right.
Or even more accurately, trying to understand how a TV relates to the movie playing on it. We are the movie, but the movie fundamentally cannot exist without the TV screen.
And the characters in the movie, by their very nature of being two-dimensional projections, can never turn around and look at the physical screen they are projected onto.
Which brings us to a massive, lingering problem. If God is this all-encompassing TV screen that we cannot turn around and see, how on earth do we interact with it?
Yeah.
If we are stuck in the movie, how do we relate to the screen?
Well, if visual comprehension is biologically impossible, we are forced to find an entirely different mode of engagement.
The sources point out a fascinating detail about the Quran regarding this. Human beings love autobiographies.
Oh, we do.
We love describing our history, our features, our origins. But God doesn't provide an autobiography in the text. There is no physical description. The text only provides the specific details humans need for guidance on how to relate to him.
Right.
It operates as a relational manual rather than a memoir.
And the notes map out 3 very specific non-visual routes provided in the text for engaging with this reality.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first route involves inferring the nature of the creator from his acts. It requires moving from the seen to the unseen. The Quran frequently directs the reader to find the creator in the creations. It references the splitting of the seed, the revival of dead earth after a drought, the precise alternation of night and day.
The notes highlight chapter 6, verse 95 for that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, the splitting of the seed. The seed, the rain, the changing sky, these are visible traces. They are tangible evidence of the framework in action. They don't provide a portrait of the framework, but they allow you to know the cause through the effect.
Okay, looking at a seed growing is a trace. It shows me the framework is running. But that still feels somewhat distant. I mean, observing nature is beautiful, but does the text offer anything for how we comprehend this internally?
It does through the second route, which is God-given similitudes. The closest the text comes to providing an image is the light verse, chapter 24, verse 35. It states, God is the light of the heavens and the earth.
But the notes warn about that, right?
Exactly. The source notes explicitly warn against treating this as a physical description. It is a parable of function.
An engineering schematic for the soul, essentially.
Exactly that. The verse describes a niche containing a lamp, the lamp inside a glass shining like a pearly star, lit from a blessed olive tree.
Beautiful imagery.
It really is. And the theological interpretation breaks this down conceptually. The niche represents the human heart. The lamb is faith. The oil from the tree is the inborn human longing that flares up into light the moment a spark of truth comes in contact with it.
Wow.
It is a highly intricate diagram of how the divine light operates within human consciousness.
So it's describing an internal mechanism, not a physical being.
Right.
But even a schematic is something you look at from the outside. How do we actually interact with it in real time? Which leads to the third route from the sources. Think presence, not picture.
Yeah, this is key.
The text quotes chapter 50, verse 16, which states that God is closer to him than his jugular vein.
That represents the most profound shift in the entire theological framework. God's nature is known relationally, not observationally. The text states, He hears your inner promptings. He is nearer to you than your own pulse.
You simply cannot put a frame around the concept of closeness.
Oh.
Like try drawing the distance between your sense of self and your own jugular vein in a way that captures that intimacy.
Oh.
You can't. You don't frame that presence. You inhabit it. It demands active awareness rather than visual imagination.
Awareness.
Yeah.
And that concept of inhabiting an awareness is where our sources make an incredible pivot, because this theological idea of an omnipresent reality that we simply inhabit sounds strikingly similar to the philosophical concepts presented by Alan Watts.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
Cosmologists, psychologists, and philosophers hit this exact same wall when they try to study human consciousness. We have a transcript from one of Watts' lectures, and he is approaching this exact problem of ultimate reality just from the perspective of human psychology and the universe.
We are shifting from a theological lens to a cosmological one, yet the underlying mechanics of the problem remain virtually identical.
That's amazing.
Watts introduces the concept that the universe is quite literally a system which is aware of itself. We, as living, breathing organisms, are just forms of the energy of the universe. We are no different than the stars, the rocks, or the galaxies.
Right.
The only difference is that through our sense organs, this vast system of cosmic energy finally becomes aware of itself. Through us, the universe is looking back at itself.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
If we are literally the universe looking at itself, why do human beings feel so profoundly isolated? Why do we walk around feeling like strangers in a strange land, completely disconnected from the framework?
Watts has this mind-bending answer for that. He argues that the aspect of the universe which is doing the actual raw mechanism of consciousness cannot see itself.
It is the exact same category error of visualization we discussed with the theological notes, just applied to human consciousness.
Yes. Watts uses these incredible physical analogies to prove it, and they instantly make you want to try them and fail.
Oh, I know.
He says you can't look at your own eyes with your own eyes. You can't kiss your own lips. You can't bite your own teeth.
But no matter how hard you try.
Exactly. No matter how much focus you apply, you cannot touch the tip of your index finger with the tip of that exact same index finger.
Because every attempt to make the observer the object of its own observation inherently fails. The tool cannot measure the tool.
And because of this physical and mental impossibility, Watts points out that it creates a literal blank spot on the backside of all observation. Just like there is a biological blankness behind your eyes from the perspective of your vision, there is a blank side to all of human experience. The deepest, most fundamental you is the unknown side. It is the nothingness.
Watts is really highlighting the binary nature of reality here. He relates it to the Chinese concept of yin and yang, the positive and negative poles. In computer science, it is the 1 and the 0. Reality is entirely constructed of off and on, conscious and unconscious. The vital insight Watts offers is that the unconscious is the part of the experience that is actively doing the consciousness.
The background is what manifests the figure.
Yes, exactly. The trough of the water is what allows the wave to exist. Space is what manifests the solid object. The part of your mind that feels impenetrable, silent, and unknown is precisely the part that is generating your awareness in this exact moment.
So what does this all mean for us? For the person walking around feeling disconnected and anxious? Watts applies this directly to our everyday dread. He notes that people in modern culture are absolutely terrified of nothingness.
Oh, yeah?
We're terrified of death. We get uneasy about sleep because we view it as a blank waste of time, a loss of ego. We harbor this lurking existential anxiety that the whole universe is eventually going to run down, burn out, and end in a void.
It is a deeply pervasive cultural anxiety. We inherently equate nothingness with failure, erasure, or a lack of existence.
But Watts argues this is a completely unreasonable fear, because it is precisely this nothingness that is always the source of something. He uses the image of crystal clear space in the night sky. You need that absolute empty nothingness in order to bring the stars into focus.
Right.
Without the clear empty space, the stars wouldn't have the freedom to be seen. That nothingness isn't a void coming to swallow you, that nothingness is just your own eyeball. It's your own consciousness providing the space for reality to exist.
The nothingness is not an empty void waiting to consume you. It is the lens through which reality is currently being experienced. It's the TV screen, from our earlier analogy, completely blank on its own, yet entirely responsible for the movie you are watching.
It is wild how these seemingly distinct sources converge on the exact same fundamental truth.
It really is.
I mean, we started with the Islamic theological notes, exploring the necessary destruction of our visual boundaries. We looked at the idea that God is the ultimate conscious framework, the rules of the game that you can't see but fundamentally cannot exist without. We explored the 3 routes to relate to that framework, looking for the traces in nature, understanding the internal diagrams of function, and inhabiting the closeness of presence. And then we shift to Alan Watts, who tells us that our very own consciousness is an unseeable eye, a necessary blank spot that the universe uses to experience itself.
The underlying logic is undeniable. Whenever human beings attempt to step outside of reality, to take a Polaroid of the ultimate cause, whether we choose to call that God, the universe, or our own deepest self, we will always fail. We cannot put a frame around the infinite. We can only experience its effects from the inside.
So the central takeaway for you today is that we have to stop trying to put a frame around the ultimate reality. Stop trying to locate the physical edges of the TV screen while you are still inside the movie. Look for the traces, understand the rules of the framework you are operating within, and learn to simply inhabit the awareness.
And that leaves us with something quite profound to consider as you step back into your daily routine. We learned today that in Islamic theology, God is the ultimate conscious framework that hears our innermost promptings, closer to us than our jugular vein.
Yeah.
And in Alan Watts' philosophy, we are the universe's energy observing itself from a necessary blank spot. So tomorrow morning, when you are sitting in complete silence, perhaps just observing a tree out your window or listening to the steady rhythm of your own breath, ask yourself, are you a character anxiously trying to figure out who is watching the TV? Or are you simply the universe's blank spot finally taking a moment to sit back and appreciate the movie?
A perfect question to leave hanging in the air. Thanks for coming along on this deep dive. Keep questioning the framework, keep looking for the traces, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Until next time, keep diving deep.